So I have some great news here for Apollo Lake owners. I discovered that the Civil Top Air had the power limits disabled, and this was the whole reason why it performed so well, because back in the past when I had the Core M tablets and later on the notebooks and things, I discovered that that if you increase the power limits, that would increase the performance, of course. So what happens is the Apollo Lake has a limit that you can see here of 6 watts by default. That's what Intel sets, that's what's in the BIOS normally. Apart from some manufacturers decided that, okay, they would disable that power limit. Now this is to keep the power consumption under control, to keep the heat under control as well. But what it really does is once it hits that 6 watts, what I've discovered when you're gaming at least on these chipsets, that it will clock down the GPU, resulting in reduced performance. So what this little tweak here does is it's using read-write everything. So we're reading part of the memory, we're adjusting it, and what we are basically doing is lifting that 6 watt limit and making that a 10 watt limit, or even 15 if you wanted to. There's more risk though, because it's going to generate a lot more heat. But in turn, what it's doing is, like the Civil Top Air that I reviewed, the performance really does increase, because it will then be able to hold the GPU clock of 700 megahertz that it has on there. So I am looking at the thermals at the moment. I'm going to do a very quick test, and that's going to involve Half-Life 2 Lost Coast. So I'm going to run it. This on the stock 6 watt. We'll look at the thermals, and then I'll do the mod. Now, if you want to do this mod yourself, I recommend that you check out the forum link. But first, make sure that your laptop, like the EasyBook 3 Pro, this is the On-Deshoma 31, getting confused here. And it's basically like the EasyBook 3 Pro. So it's got a good copper heatsink in there, and that is very important to do this mod. You must have a good heatsink on there. Laptops like the Lapbook 12.3 and then the 14.1 do not have good heatsinks in there, so they will reach thermal throttling temperatures straight away with this mod. Anyway, let's start out here with Half-Life Lost Coast. So this is the source engine. It's very easy for it to run. Now, this is running the Pentium N4200, which is one of the fastest that you can get of the Apollo Lake series. So the video settings I'm using, if you want to do this home test yourself, 720p, everything on the lowest settings graphically, just to make it easy so we can keep the same settings across all these devices. Now I'm going to run this test now and show you the result. This is the video stress test. Alright, so this is the score it got, 74 frames per second. I have done no thermal tweaks here. Remember that this is the Pentium N4200, so it's going to be a little faster than the N3450. So let's do that tweak now. Okay, so in order to apply this mod, there is a link in the description of this video if you happen to be watching just on YouTube. And if you read through that article, there's just a few warnings on there. There's also recommendations on what laptops I have tested that have copper heatsinks that I recommend that you could get away with doing this tweak on. But there's some that I don't recommend. And just basically a big warning. So download the application there, which is read-write everything. I've got it running here now. Go into Access, down to Command, and that is where you will paste the command right here, and then you should have this come up. So it's done the memory edit. Now, once you put the device into sleep or reboot, you'll have to do this process again. So you can actually create a shortcut, which I've done on my desktop here. So whenever I click that, it's going to set it to 10 watts. So HW info, let's run that and have a look and see if it is in fact applying the 10 watt power limit. Oops, it's already open. Okay, there we go. So under the processor right here, just refresh that. You can see now that the power limit number 1 is now 10 watts right there. That is what we want. So let's run that benchmark again and take a look at the kind of improvements we're going to see from the N4200. Okay, so that result is 93. That's an improvement of around 20%, which isn't really that great because the N34s are where the biggest change is, because I've seen it go from 57 frames per second up to about 92. And in other games, I've seen it go even higher. You're looking at about a 70 to 80% improvement in gaming frames per second. So go to the desktop here and we'll have a very quick look at the thermals. You know, it's not even really getting hot. Look at that. It just shows you how well the copper heatsink is working in this Onda Shoma 31 here. So only 64 and then 66 on the GPU. So I'm going to try now with the wattage, the power limit set to 15. So that's just given us a couple more frames per second, so not really too much of an improvement there. Now the thermals, I just had a look, it got up to 67 degrees, so only 1 degree more. Of course, this is only just the benchmark, so if you intend to game for hours on end, then expect those temperatures to keep rising and climbing, and you can always add a thermal pad too between the copper heatsink and the rear body of this. Now I'm going to test out the Sauron N3450. This is way more common. This Apollo Lake is pretty much in everything. They don't really use the N4200 a lot because it's more expensive. So same settings again, 720p, lower settings. This is the stock 6 watts on the T-Book 4. Let's have a look and see how this one performs. Okay, so that one got 55.6. That's with 6 watts. Let's try it now with 15 watts. So amazing results here. Look at this, 98, almost 99 frames per second. That's even faster than the Intel HD 505 with the 18 executional cores, executional units or whatever they call them on the GPU. So that is an, I don't know, approximate 80%, almost 75, 80% boost in frames per second, which is just amazing. So let's have a look on the temperatures to make sure it's not cooking itself. And so far, look at that. This is after 10 minutes. So only 10 minutes running these benchmarks. It's gotten itself up to 68 degrees. So best of luck with your own tweaking the power limits here. And I really hope that manufacturers out of China, like Civiltop and the T-Book Air, that they start to give us that option in the BIOS, the power limits. Let us change that. If you do have a good copper heatsink on there, I see no reason why not to do this tweak for those that want maximum performance. Of course, it comes at the cost of battery life. That is going to drop down because it's going to be exceeding the 6 watts. And then thermals, do keep a very close eye on those, especially on some of those systems that don't have very good copper heat sinks on them. Thanks a lot for watching this video and enjoy the extra boost you're getting from your GPU. And also the CPU as well does get a little bit of a benefit.